Hello, Patriots, and welcome back to the Patriot Dad channel. Today, we're doing a reaction to Piers Morgan and Tucker Carlson getting together in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Now, we're going to be reacting to segments of this podcast. So in this episode, we'll be reacting to two sub-segments. Zelensky is getting rich from war, and should NATO be abolished? Let's get the video pulled up, and let's get to reacting, shall we?
How rich do you think he's gotten from this war?
I have no idea.
Does it bother you that he's gotten rich?
He's not as rich as Vladimir Putin.
Well, I mean, if all comparisons are to Putin, then all bets are off.
Putin,
right? Putin is extremely wealthy, by the way. Also, just the other day, they released on X that 100 billion of the 167 billion or so dollars that was supposed to go to Ukraine, 100 billion of it never made it there, according to Zelensky. Now, I don't know if I believe him. I don't know if I believe the USAID folks and the people in our government. I don't think I believe any of them. But the fact that there are at least the high tens of billions of dollars missing that was supposed to go to Ukraine should have a lot of people asking a lot of questions.
Putin's financially raped and pillaged his country for...
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't... I'm not an accountant. Okay, let's say he has.
He's got a personal net worth of 100 billion rubles, whatever it is.
I don't know how we would know that, but great, he does. He's evil. We'll just stick with that.
Oh, Steelman. Okay. Yep. Just granted. Sure. None of us actually know what his wealth is. Like Tucker points out, we are not his accountants.
But the question is, why would you support personally a dictator who's gotten rich on a war in his country, who bans a Christian denomination and who murders his political opponents?
Well, he literally only been the
Does that bother you at all?
Well, he'd been leader of his country for 2 years.
Well, he's done a lot of oppression in 2 years.
He didn't get rich on corruption in 2 years.
But can I ask?
We sent so much money there. You can absolutely get rich in 2 years on that amount of money.
Ask you, when you talk to Zelensky,
Putin's been doing this for 30 years.
Why don't you have an election? Why don't you stop murdering your political opponents? Why don't you let people practice their Christian denomination? Why don't you let Russian speakers speak Russian and read Russian books?
Yeah.
That's what non-dictators do.
Did you say any of that to Putin?
Of course not.
Why not?
Because I'm not his friend. I don't have the relationship with Putin that you have with Zelensky. I didn't tweet after my interview, "You're a very handsome man. I love you. I love you."
What? Okay. I'm not aware of this tweet or of that interview. Maybe we'll go back and watch it. But it is very interesting how you see people always do this whataboutism stuff. Questioning Zelensky, and then it's like, yeah, but what about Putin? Questioning anything about Zelensky, yeah, but Putin's worse. Or some kind of moral relativism. Guys, that's crazy. Both of them can be bad. There might be gradients of bad, but Zelensky isn't good just because Putin is bad. Like, I don't know where that position comes from.
I didn't call him a very handsome man.
I think you did.
I don't think he's a very handsome man, actually.
Hot is maybe what you said.
I don't think I called him hot.
Okay. Well, you said I really admire you, and I think
but you asking me to ask all the questions of Zelensky, you didn't ask
because
Putin.
He's a personal friend of yours. I'm not friends with Putin. I'm just a guy
I'm
who
not
showed
personal
up.
friends with Zelensky.
Ooh,
I admire his...
read your Twitter feed.
I admire him.
You can't fool me, Piers
You can't
Morgan.
miscategorize me. I'm not a friend of his. I've only met him once, but I do admire his fortitude as a leader. I love the fact he stayed in Kyiv when the Russians went in.
Did he? Or was it kind of like Joe Biden had the other White House built across the street that was a movie set? Like, did he actually stay in Ukraine? Also, the guy used to be a comedian. He was on like an American Idol style show playing a piano with his dick. Like, Guys, I can't take Zelensky seriously, and I don't know how anyone else does. He is a puppet, and he is basically an excuse for funneling money to people to make them rich. It's quite obvious, but apparently not that obvious because a lot of people still think he's just great.
Could have fled. Many would have done that position. Everyone thought the Russians would win in a few days.
Yeah,
they didn't.
I agree.
I do admire the fortitude that he showed as a leader. Those characteristics I like.
If you back me with $167 billion, I will also have fortitude. You have my words.
Doesn't mean he's...
you called him a magnificent leader. In fact, I'm pretty sure.
I think he has been.
Okay, so I'm just asking, since I didn't call Putin a magnificent leader at all.
But nor did you ask him any of the questions that you want me to ask.
I didn't feel like, I didn't want to do what everybody does, which is, you're so bad, Vladimir Putin, meaning I'm so good, I'm going to give you a moral extra. I'm like, whatever, it's your country. Country's actually doing great. I was super impressed by Moscow. I'd recommend it to everybody just because it's beautiful and orderly, which I like. I'm not moving there. They don't have freedom of speech, which is a prerequisite for me.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like that was my job. I just want to hear what the guy says. We're fighting a war against him and no one's heard him speak.
Why do you believe him?
I don't know that I do.
Do you know? I mean, you believe his reasoning.
I believe something.
You believe the reasoning for the war. You're fully all in on the Russian.
There's kind of no question about that.
Well, there's a lot of questions about it.
I don't really think so. I don't think any informed person, I mean, Bill Burns, the head
Only 10% of people in eastern Ukraine actually want Russia to take them over.
But it's so interesting that can't those 10% break away and go back to Russia? Like, what? Why is there this death grip? Why are we fighting? Why are so many people dying for this? The argument on the left is always that, oh, he's going to continue his push into Europe. Guys, every time he's invaded somewhere, it's when we offered NATO membership to a different country, another country, or we're talking to another country and getting friendly with them and trying to entice them to the West. Doesn't help that with the Maidan that we like helped overthrow the pro-Russia government and put a pro-Western government in place in Ukraine. Like, guys, this whole perspective, like this is happening in a vacuum, is crazy. I don't understand people's position on this. Maybe you can help me with that. Put it in the comments.
Okay, I don't know how we know that, but I believe that. But it doesn't.
It's a poll, same poll you quoted me about Crimea.
So well, that wasn't a poll; it was an election.
So the vast
which are critical to democracy.
Okay.
I don't know if you knew that.
But the vast
when you're a magnificent leader,
an election is a poll. They're called polls.
An election is a poll. A poll is not an election, right? So there are different criteria for polls.
Well, a poll can be an election, yes.
Now we're getting metaphysical, but I would just say, if you believe in democracy, you believe in elections. If you have a leader who's not elected, he's not a democratic leader, he's a dictator, which is okay, that's fine. It's a foreign country. I wouldn't call any dictator magnificent just because it seems a little
How could
more...
Zelensky have an election in the middle of a war, out of interest?
I don't know.
You just have it. Like, it's supposed to be all about democracy, right? Right?
How did Franklin Roosevelt do that in the middle of the Second World War? How did he do that?
Because no one had invaded America.
I mean, to be fair, they did attack Hawaii. Like, there weren't troops on the ground, true, but we were actively involved in a conflict, still had an election.
Okay, well, but how about
the people could actually vote?
Well,
I mean,
there are people,
you've got half of Ukraine.
People making billions of dollars
half
in
of Ukraine
business in Kiev today.
Yeah.
How about the non-occupied parts of the country? Just make a good faith effort to have an election. But he doesn't want to because I think he's pretty darn unpopular because he is a lackey of Western powers who sold his country out. And Ukrainians know perfectly well that he's getting rich. And so is the entire leadership. I was in Courchevel, France 2 weeks ago, which is probably the richest town in Europe. It's a ski town in France near Geneva. And everybody at the Hermès store was Ukrainian, using my money to buy $100,000 handbags. Nobody seems to care about that. I care because that...
I'm sorry. Did he just say $100,000 handbag? What? Luxury items are on a whole different level, folks. That is wild. But yeah, why are all these Ukrainians over there in Europe spending a ton of money? Where did they get the money? Maybe there's documentation at USAID that Elon Musk can find for us. Maybe we can get some of those receipts. What do you guys think? It's so annoying. This whole thing. You see videos. Now, granted, any of it can be propaganda. The Russian side videos can be propaganda. The Ukrainian side videos can be propaganda. The Europe and American side, like all of it could just be all propaganda. Granted. But when you have video of people getting snatched off the street to go fight, you have people hiding in foxholes, and then you have leaders in Europe spending $100,000 on bags, like something is broken here.
That's not freedom fighting. That's grifting. That's theft. And everybody in Europe knows that. And you know that too. Go to Romania. All their, high-end car dealerships are sold out because Ukrainians have bought the cars.
So to be clear, when...
Like, what the hell is this?
So when Putin invaded Ukraine, you'd have given him what he wants? Take whatever you want?
Well, as I've said, and I really mean it from my heart, I mean, I have no I'm not getting rich from this, so I'm saying what I sincerely believe, which is pushing Ukraine to join NATO.
Yep.
When NATO doesn't want Ukraine, there's no strategic reason, no actual reason to have Ukraine in NATO, or to have NATO at all. We shouldn't have NATO at all.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Oh, this is where we're getting into the next topic. This will be the second topic of this video. Should NATO be abolished? We have a video about NATO and how NATO has been kind of the aggressor over the last few decades, at least according to most reporting. You can go watch that video if you disagree. Leave me a comment there. Let me know what you think. But guys, we have been pushing to expand NATO, which, as Tucker points out here, and I agree, shouldn't exist anymore. It should have ended when we considered offering membership to Russia, because the entire purpose of it is to defend the West from the East. Let Russia join it, dissolve it. What are we really there for now? All NATO does is it wants more membership so that it can sell US-made weapons to NATO countries. There's a military-industrial complex incentive to having an increase in the number of member countries in NATO, and I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. Do you?
That's preposterous.
What's the point of NATO?
To keep
Keep
peace.
the Soviets from invading Western Europe. Oh, well, it's been 35 years since they
Actually,
existed.
to keep peace.
How's that worked? To keep peace.
Actually-
We now have the bloodiest war in 80 years in the middle of Europe because of NATO. So how's
Yes.
this peacekeeping
Or
activity?
you could argue, as many people do, that actually the reason is because Ukraine wasn't in NATO. Had it been, Putin wouldn't have invaded.
That's a super crazy. This is like an addiction. And
Except the whole purpose of the former Soviet republics and the Iron Curtain was to separate Moscow and Greater Russia from Europe. Because the influence of Europe, when the Nazis pushed from Germany almost all the way to Moscow, Moscow said, whoa, 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 we don't want this stuff. We don't want it here. Keep it as far away from us as possible. And they made a land barrier. And ever since the Soviet Union fell, we are just poking the bear at every opportunity we can. It's like, I don't know what people are supposed to think, but I know what we're being told to think, which is Russia is the aggressor. But you can't argue with the fact that we helped foment revolution in Ukraine and had the existing pro-Russia government tossed out and a pro-Western government installed. We've been doing it in South America for like 70 years. Guys, we're doing it in Europe. We're doing it all over the world. We're seeing evidence of this in the USAID Twitter files that are coming out. Just go follow Mike Benz's work. He's been doing great stuff. So go over to X, follow Mike Benz. Putting out amazing information about USAID and how we use it and its money to influence foreign countries just like this.
I've been through addiction, so I'm not judging at all, but it's like, I feel really shitty. I've got to have a glass of vodka to feel better.
Are you mocking my mental health?
I'm not, yes. But I'm also saying that I've lived this, so I know what it feels like. It's the thing that is killing you.
Yep.
It's truly killing you, whether it's NATO or vodka. You become convinced is saving you. So you wake up hungover and you're like, oh, I feel so bad. Give me a screwdriver. And you have a screwdriver, you feel better. And you don't realize that you're starting the cycle again.
Would Putin have invaded Ukraine if it had been a member of NATO? No, he wouldn't have done. Because then America would have been obliged to
Russia would
respond.
never, here's what I know. For a fact, Putin said this
Russia would never have allowed Ukraine to become a member nation.
for 20 years. Ukraine cannot be a member of NATO. They will not accept that any more than we would accept Chinese missiles in Tijuana, or you would accept Sri Lankan missiles in Glasgow. You're just not going to accept that.
NATO is a defensive organization.
How is it defensive?
Because it has never acted proactively, aggressively.
Really? Where were you when the Yugoslavia war was going on? And they were bombing the shit out of Christians in Yugoslavia. Do you remember that?
Yes.
That was pretty offensive.
NATO has always operated in a defensive capacity.
Really?
Yes.
That's how they created Kosovo? Defensively?
It was defensive.
Oh, it was?
Yes, it
Who was
was.
the aggressor there?
Well, you know, my brother-in-law was
Ha! Gotcha.
literally there.
Just a minute. What you're saying is insane.
It's not insane.
They could,
NATO has never actually acted unilaterally.
Okay, so the
aggressively.
Soviet Union
It's never
collapses-
attacked anybody without being attacked. It's always been defensive.
who in Yugoslavia attacked NATO?
Look,
Here's the point where you just admit defeat. Bow your head and
I'm
be
not
like, you
defeating.
know what? I bow before superior knowledge. I totally got this wrong. I can't believe I had such a silly idea. I'm
well,
sorry.
you think nice, good guys in
I'm
Yugoslavia?
not saying they're nice, good guys.
We're
I'm just
just
saying
up
that
to-
was not
up
a
to-
defensive
up to no
action.
good-
That was an offensive action.
was
Where
a-
Bill Clinton's like, I don't like what you're doing. I'm going to use NATO to kill you. And he did, and then created Kosovo as a NATO base.
Because
Yep.
they were absolute genocidal
Well, they may have
maniacs.
been naughty. I'm not defending their
But that's what they
behavior.
were being defended against.
Who are we defending?
The Yugoslavians that were being pillaged and raped and murdered.
By whom?
By other Yugoslavians.
Yes.
Okay. Phew. This is getting intense. But
NATO is a defensive
look, you
organization.
can say it all you want. Just like you can say Zelensky's a a beacon of democracy when he's not elected and he's banning parts of Christianity, but he's a dictator.
So just to be
it's better
clear,
just to be honest about what things are.
just to be clear, you would have let Putin take what he wants. Because what's the alternative? When he invaded you,
Stay out of it altogether. Stop trying to topple governments. Stop trying to manipulate countries. Stay out of it. That's my input.
Ukraine.
So I try and deal, especially as I get older, in the world of reality and achievable goals. And here's the reality. Russia is a nuclear-armed power. It's the largest country on Earth by landmass.
Yep.
It's also the remnants of a global empire. So
Yep.
they have a sense of themselves as a global player, and they are because of
Yep.
energy and resources in general. Uranium. I mean, they have a lot of resources the world needs. So they're a
Yep.
real country. They're not Afghanistan. You can't just tell them what to do. Get in line, bitch. They're not going to accept that, okay? So they have said, since the fall of the Soviet Union, you cannot have NATO on our border because it's a critical national interest of ours. So unless you want to risk nuclear war, which we are now doing, you can't move NATO to their border, whether you want to or not. That's just a fact. And if you do, you're going to get a war. We've known that since the fall of the Soviet Union, and we promised not to do it. And we tried to bring, he asked to be in NATO in 2000. He asked George W. Bush to be in NATO. Nobody can test that. This evil dictator who wants to invade Liechtenstein asked to be in NATO. Why wouldn't we let him in NATO? Why did Condi Rice say, well, it can't be in NATO?
Because if we don't have a big bad boogeyman, what motivation do these countries have to buy U.S. weapons for defensive purposes? Yeah, no, we need to maintain that big bad boogeyman. And that's what Russia has been since the end of World War II, is the boogeyman. And we keep making him the boogeyman. We make Putin, Baba Yaga. Like, it's, guys, can we just knock that shit off and just try and reduce the amount of human suffering in the world? That would be great.
Why do we have morons like Condi Rice in our U.S. government? I don't know.
So when he invaded, though, what would you let him do?
We're in a hall of mirrors now. Look,
Well, not really.
okay,
We're in a very clear moral moment in history.
Well, he wouldn't have invaded because if we had had our way, we wouldn't have toppled the government in Ukraine. We wouldn't have been manipulating the governments of countries overseas using three-letter agencies and State Department nonsense. We would have stayed out of it. The land barrier between Russia and Europe would have stayed intact.
Where Vladimir Putin invades Ukraine, it is a European country.
and we side with
It
the
has been
dictator, and we
independent
fund his
from
secret
Russia
service
since
as
the
they
mid-90s.
assassinate people.
Yeah, but
No,
what do you do? Do you let him
there's
take
nothing
it?
moral about this. Look, in the real world, we do things we can achieve. And if we can't achieve something, we don't try and do it because millions will die as we're watching.
So what
yet
do
again.
you let him do then?
Well, you start with a realistic understanding of the limits of your power, which is
Yeah.
all adults have to do. My neighbors may offend me. I want them to turn down the music. I can't just go over there and shoot them. I just can't. It's against the law, and I'll pay a penalty if I do that.
Well, I was going to say you can, but there's going to be a pretty stiff penalty for doing it. And don't do it. Don't be violent with other people. Don't do it.
So I have to negotiate with them. Will you please turn down the music? Shut up! No, please do it. If they won't, I maybe threaten them. Like, I live in the material, real world.
Right. But once
Are you a material girl?
actually he's invaded, what do you do?
Then you have to decide, like, is it worth it?
Right.
Is it worth it?
So that's interesting to
A
me.
million Ukrainians are going to die. Their farmland's going to be sold to BlackRock. The Ukrainian nation will cease to exist. They'll flood it with third worlders.
So
which
what do
they're
you
gonna
do? What do you do?
What would I do?
Yes.
I would say, like, if I took over the government in January of 2022 and we're on the verge of a Russian invasion of Ukraine, I would say, guys, it's not worth trying to impose something that this country will never accept, because if we try to do that, we'll get a war.
So do you let
Yep.
Putin take Ukraine?
You don't let anybody do anything. You realistically
you do.
assess
You
what
either
you are
do or you
able
don't.
to do, because
That's not how that works, Piers. I see this a lot when progressives and leftists try and make argument, is they pretend like the world is this simple binary, which is amusing. I just thought about this. They argue everything in a binary except the things that are actually binary. Huh. Anyways, they try to pretend like it's a this or that. Like all of the things that led up to it are just assumed to be true. All of the other factors involved are just assumed to be static. No decision you would have made might have changed one of those other variables that might have avoided the whole thing in the first place. This is part of why it is so frustrating to try and have a logical argument with somebody who disagrees with your stance but takes a very dogmatic view and approach to the things they believe. They don't necessarily know why, they just know they've been told that that's the case, and they hold on to it like a religion. Good luck changing Piers' view on this. Nothing you say is going to appease him unless you just say, yep, I would let Russia take Ukraine. That's exactly what I would do, Piers. No, you would say, hey, look, there's a sliver over here. You guys want a land bridge to the Black Sea? Great. These people are basically Russian anyway. Maybe we can let you annex that part. We'll keep the rest, right? Like there could be a negotiation there. There doesn't have to be a hot war.
Because you're gambling with the other people's lives. By the way, if 1 million Brits had died, you might have a different perspective, but it's very easy to be like, oh, more Ukrainians should die for the cause of democracy.
Let me assure you, if Russia invaded Britain, that would not be the view of the British people. Our view would be to fight to the last man and woman to kick him out. But my question really is...
You really think so?
My question is not...
You guys just got invaded over the last 40 years and did nothing, so I don't think so. I don't think you would do that. I think you'd be like, we can't fight back because we have nuclear weapons, but no...
Great replacement, people. Yeah, they've been invaded for real. Like, I question, and this is kind of a hot take, but I question whether the UK is even an ally anymore. Their government, especially in London, their government overall has been so hostile towards its native people and so welcoming and forgiving to these invaders that I don't think that it is the UK anymore. I think it is a lost, fallen nation. And if it is under the control of those people who have invaded, they are not the same people anymore. They are not the same friend and ally they used to be. To look at them and say they are is ignorant. What do you guys think? Do you think the UK is still a successful ally and nation? Or do you think it's a fallen nation that has lost its way and can't be a friend in its current condition?
No real military, so we'd like to negotiate, just like all conquered nations do.
Oh, but
they negotiate on the basis of reality. What can I actually achieve?
But respectfully, you're not answering my question, which you don't have to because you're interviewing me in this bit. But the question is, once Putin invaded, do you let him take the whole country? What do you do?
If I were in charge, then?
Yes.
If I came in January of 2022, I would say to the State Department, I would say to the NATO leadership.
I'm talking about February, end of February, early March.
At that point, I'm cleaning up a mess caused by the previous administration.
Yes, so assume it's happened.
So let's say I'm Donald Trump, who's actually coming in that exact circumstance.
Right, and is now wrestling with this very problem.
He certainly is. And
he doesn't want to give Putin the win. And that's my point to you. Do you actually want him to win?
I don't think there's any winner in this conflict, guys.
Well, I mean, if your lodestar is whether other people win, you will lose.
Right.
Okay, that's a shitty way to go through life.
If
I'm trying to prevent you a win, no, I'm trying to win. I'm trying to win for my wife, my children, my neighborhood, my country.
But once he's invaded,
I don't care whether you win or
not. Once he's invaded, what do you do?
Your victory has nothing to do with anything. What I care about is my victory.
But you're in this as much as we are.
No. I care about my country and whether we win. What's good for us? Because I'm in charge of my country. This is theoretically. I'm in charge of nothing.
Is it good for America that Putin wins?
This whole thing has been a disaster. We're going to lose the U.S. dollar over this, okay? Because we followed the advice of people like Boris Johnson, who have no skin in the game whatsoever, but they get to feel like a moral charge, be like, we're on the side of democracy. Okay. It's so infuriating to make it. I'm sorry to be so mean to the Brits, because it's our fault too.
We can take it.
In fact, we started this, but you guys went along like little Pekingese. You shouldn't have done that.
But why are you not answering my question?
What would I do if I were Trump now?
No. Once he invaded Putin, what do you let him take?
I'd call Putin, let him take. I would say, at that point,
take.
To what extent can you clean it up? You call Putin and you say, all right, this happened. First thing we're going to do is recognize it's not in our interest, your interest, the world's interest to have NATO missiles on your border. We don't want that. There's no reason to want that because we don't want to drive you into the arms of China. You are really part of Europe, and you should be part of the West.
Yes.
Because the West is a Christian world that has a lot in common.
And what if he says...
Culturally, religiously, linguistically, historically, and we want to be a bloc against the rising...
And he says,
obviously.
And he says, actually, I want Ukraine.
If you're the leader of the United States, your number one goal is to keep Russia, the world's largest landmass with some of the world's deepest energy reserves, from allying with China, which has too many people, not enough land, and not enough energy. So if they get together, they create a bloc that is bigger than you economically and militarily. So you cannot let that happen. That's number one goal. You cannot let that happen. And that retard in charge of our country just allowed that to happen.
How do you really feel, Tucker? Oh, man.
He hates the United States and has acted against its interests consistently from day one. 2020 to January 20th, 2025 when he left, thank God. So that's the goal. Do not allow, to the extent you can control it, do not allow Russia to align meaningfully with China. They have much more in common with us. They're part of Europe. You guys don't want to admit that, but they are.
I don't be pedantic. But
You're not being pedantic.
What do you let Putin take?
I don't care. What I care about...
You don't care?
Well, I care,
No.
but what I care about is the balance of power in the world.
Yes.
And if the West finds itself in a place where it's got a much smaller collective economy and a much less powerful collective military than the East, then we're in serious trouble.
Yep.
There's no balance in the world. The Chinese are in charge of everything. And so you can't let that happen.
But if you roll over and you let...
Oh, it's this ego trip with him. It's not rolling over. It's being practical, like Tucker is laying out here. You can't let China and Russia form a block of power that is going to be together and have more resources, have a bigger economy, have more people, have more land, have everything. They have more everything at that point if they're cooperating. And I think one of the main reasons that we saw Biden allowing this to happen is that his family, it appears, and it is my opinion, that they have deep connections with China. A lot of the things that they did that didn't make any sense for benefiting America, guess who they benefited? China. We have people in our own legislature. You got to look at Eric Swalwell sleeping with Chinese spies. Feinstein had a Chinese spy driver. Guys, the Democrat Party appears to be very intertwined with China. So it seems, and it is my opinion, that they would love to see Putin pushed into the hands of China, because then that would embolden and empower them. It would make China more successful and more prosperous. I, as an American, don't want that to happen. I, as an American, think that it is not worth the conflict in Ukraine to make that happen. Do you? I think it's an awful idea.
Putin take what he
Roll
wants.
over. It's all this like dick
Fine.
measuring contest. It's
Let me
so
just
dumb.
let me just respond.
Roll over.
Let me just respond. If you roll over and you let him take what he wants in Ukraine, why should China not go and take what they want in Taiwan, for example? They would just take.
Well, they are going to take what they
but
want in Taiwan.
I'm not sure they will, especially with Trump as president.
Part of China.
Oh, was that a Trump compliment from Piers Morgan? They absolutely would have if Kamala or Joe or any of those Democrats had been elected. They absolutely would have taken Taiwan.
I don't think they will.
Okay. Why do we get to dictate what China does with Taiwan? Like, there's spheres of
You'd be
influence.
happy for them to take back
Of course,
Taiwan?
I'm not happy. I'm not happy with any conflict ever. I hate violence. I'm a Christian. I'm just saying that great countries have spheres of influence. So Saudi Arabia, where we are now, everyone's like, oh, the Saudis are interfering in Yemen. Well, Yemen's right there. It's in their world. Like, they have an absolute interest in making sure that like nothing crazy goes on in Yemen. We have the same interest in Mexico and in Canada. And we have some crazy cross-dressing prime minister in Canada. So we kick them out because they're on our border. That's what great powers do. That's what they've always done. That's what they always will do. So it's totally fair for us to recognize that the countries around Russia, no, we shouldn't be invading or torturing them or oppressing them, of course. But that's their sphere. And big picture, holy smokes, you do not want the two largest powers in the world, apart from the United States, to get together and align against us.
So, folks, that was a lot of fun. And I look forward to reacting to the other segments in this interview. Guys, what do you think about Zelensky and the other oligarchs in Ukraine getting enriched through this conflict? What do you think about the missing $100 billion that was reported by Elon Musk from USAID? What do you think about Russia's position in Ukraine? Do you think that invasion would have happened if we had not overthrown the pro-Russia government in Ukraine many years ago? Do you think that if we hadn't been interfering directly in the machinations of other countries in Europe and everywhere else, do you think that this would have still happened in the same way? Do you think Russia invaded Ukraine just because they wanted to expand, or do you think it was in response to NATO expansionism? Go ahead and let me know what you guys think. You can let me know what you think in the Discord. You can also let me know what you think over at X. So thank you to those of you that made it to the end of this video. I greatly appreciate your support. If you're looking for ways to support the channel, head on over to coffeebrandcoffee.com. Check out their entire inventory of coffee, tea, and cocos. You can make a purchase there. You can use the promotion code that we have here on the channel, and a little bit will come back to the channel and allow me to provide more content for you. If you're looking for a free way to support the channel, you can like the video, share the video, leave a comment on the video, or subscribe to the channel. All of these help out with the algorithm. Every time you help out with the algorithm, the video gets seen more and more people. The more people that see the video, the more content I can bring you. Head on over to the Discord at the invite link below, and join the conversation going on there, or go over to X and follow us there at PatriotDad_USA. I have a live weekly news update show Saturday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, as well as a space on X with the Questionable Gardener and others every Tuesday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern. I look forward to seeing you there. You can directly interact with us, ask questions, and join the conversation about the topics that we are discussing that day. If you have a recommendation for a video or reaction you want to see in the future, you can leave in a comment below, or you can send it to the email address visible on this page. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Take care of yourselves, and God bless. Go ahead and check out one of the links on the screen now to either subscribe to the channel and see the rest of the videos of the channel, or one of the carefully selected videos that you may wish to see that YouTube has used its algorithm to select for you.